evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 129 of the Retrospectives podcast, Recettear, an Item Shop's Tale. My name is Patrick Arthur, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, James Turlings. James, you've picked an indie game that was released in Japan and then localized in Australia. You mentioned that this game was in my Steam library, and it is absolutely true. I did play this game a bit when it first released because of word of mouth. This is a game that came out around the time the indie scene was first really forming. This is in the early games of Steam, where you would only see an indie game on Steam once every few days. What made you want to choose Recettear? Do you have any familiarity with this game? Had you watched reviews, or it just popped up out of nowhere?
Yeah, so my main experience with this game is seeing a friend playing it a long time ago on their computer. And since then, playing a couple of other similar games in the shop management sim kind of genre, notably Potionomics a few years ago. And I really wanted to do this one for a while. And it felt like a good time to pick it after we did Baldur's Gate, kind of something completely opposite. I was pretty much expecting a game with fun, silly shop mechanics, and from all the reviews I'd read, terrible dungeons, and we'll get into that a bit later.
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard of this game before, it is as James said, a shop management sim, which is kind of a new genre. At the time, this was an absolute novelty. I don't think there was anything really like it, but we kind of have a genre for it now because a lot of games have emulated what Recettear did. It was developed by Easy Game Station and first released in Japan in 2007, but it was expanded to an international audience with a localization by Carp Fulga in 2010. And it was a smash hit. Like, it sold wildly beyond the expectations of both the developer and the localization team. The basic setup of this game is that you play as Recette. She is the daughter of an adventurer who has disappeared after taking out a large loan. A fairy by the name of Tia, and I know I said a fairy as if it was normal, but this is anime, so this is how it works. She acts as a loan shark, and she tells Recette that she has inherited the debt and must pay it off within 36 days, or the house that she lives in will be repossessed. Together, Recette and Tia open up an adventure item shop, which is cutely called Recettear, portmanteau of their names, in order to raise the funds needed to pay off the loan. Before we get into the heart of the discussion of the gameplay, let's talk a little bit about how we played this, because I played it a bit differently to how I normally do games, which is sitting behind my PC. Did you have any technical issues, or was this just on the PC for you, James?
No, I just played this one on Steam. I don't think I had it crash or anything like that. And it just kind of like worked out the box. It's an older game. It's got, older style resolution settings, but like it worked totally fine. Without having to do anything extra.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing of note with this is that the base controls use ZXC, which is apparently a common thing in Japan, or emulators if you've ever used those before for those old Game Boy games. But it might throw you off when you first get to the menu and like your enter key isn't working, but it all works fine. For me, James, this is the first game, or I guess second game, that I've played start to finish on my Steam Deck. I've been house sitting.
Ooh.
So I brought my Steam Deck along with me, and it turned out that this was the perfect game. It is technically unsupported on Steam Deck, but I don't really understand what that means because it worked literally perfectly. There was nothing about it being on Steam Deck where I had any issues at any point whatsoever. So it's probably like something that the developer has to apply for and like get verified or something. I don't know how it works, but this game works extremely well on Steam Deck. So if you own it and want to play it, I think Steam Deck's a good option. The basic thing to understand about this game is that as a shopkeeping sim, this is a pretty straightforward one. There aren't a lot of complicated economic mechanics in this game, in the sense that a typical management sim like the one we've played is Emperor, where you have to manage supply chains and things like that. With this game, there are a few ways to get items for your shop. There are a few ways to sell items, mainly advanced orders and just having them inside your shop. And outside of that, the game plays relatively simply. So you essentially have a store, and the store has item slots on it, on the benches inside your store. So to start off with, you have about 16, it's at 12 to 16 item slots available. You have a base value of all those items, and it tells you what that base value is. So an apple might be 300. You place that apple down on one of these slots that are in your store, and customers can purchase those items by bringing them over to you. The key is that when they bring them over to you, you can haggle with them. And Tier helpfully tells you that customers will buy up to about 130% of base price as a rough guideline for you to start with, which is pretty accurate. Different customers will have slightly different variants for what they can stomach, but that gives you an idea of how it works. You sell the item, you make a profit, and then you move on to the next sale when the customer brings the next item over to you.
Yeah, and I would say the general flow of the game as a whole is that you set up your shop and then you sit there doing sales for, maybe like 5 minutes or
I think it's
so.
even less. It's probably like 2 minutes.
Yeah. And then, once that's done, you go and use that money you just made to acquire more items, and then you start selling them again. So the game's structure from, I guess, like a macro perspective is that narratively, you're trying to pay back your father's debt, and each week you need to pay back a certain amount. So there's like a deadline and a calendar you can look at. Each day is split into 4 time segments that you can use. So opening the shop and selling stuff takes 1 segment. Going to town, buying stuff takes 1 segment. And going to the dungeon takes 2 segments.
It's also worth noting that visiting town, and you can go to several different locations. It's when you return to shop that it actually chips away at your time segment.
Yeah, because you can buy stuff from either the market or the guild, which sell slightly different things, and you can also go to different locations to see like story scenes or like little skits between the characters. These aren't normally too long, but it's generally about trying to find a balance between having enough stock to sell stuff and trying to maximize how much time you're spending selling things.
You know what's funny, James? Like this structure of like the town. I don't know if this like setup is normal, but there's this fantastic game that came out, I think a year or two ago, called Neon White. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I know that game.
Yeah, Neon White.
It's the one. Is that the speedrunning one?
Yeah, it's the speedrunning game with the most cringe-worthy story in existence, and some of the best gameplay mechanics I've ever experienced at the same time. I'm very conflicted about that game, but it has that same thing where you like go to town and interact with characters. So I don't know if this is like a normal kind of setup for these kinds of games for this era, but it works pretty well. You know, you kind of have little bits of story in between the gameplay, and it's kind of like nicely sectioned off.
Yeah, and I think it's good. So generally the game's tone is pretty silly, like frankly, like not a little bit, like a lot. Like the whole premise of the game is that you're this like young girl whose father
She's like 8. Like she's very young.
Yeah, she's like 8 or something. And it's like in the narrative, it's like her father had a debt, and then one day he bolted up in bed, yelled, "I'm going to be a hero," and ran out the front door, never to return. It's like, Jesus, very silly. And most of the interactions are, roughly the same. Like the general vibe or dynamic between the 2 main characters is that Recette is stupid because she's a little girl, and that the loan shark is an adult and is constantly like in shock and awe of the stupid things that the main character says. It generally works pretty well, especially when you're interacting with other like townsfolk. I wouldn't say it's like it made me laugh physically a few times, but a lot of the times it got like a little smile out of me, I'd say is more common. But over the last couple of years, I've been interested in this genre, right? And I've looked at a lot of reviews for these kinds of games, and the overwhelming thing that I've noticed like as a trend is that most of the games copying Recettear also copy this kind of opportunity cost time management thing that's going on with the segments in the days. And a lot of players find that really stressful and hate it. So normally the comment sections for reviews on these games is half people saying this is awesome, it made me have to think about what I was doing with my day, etc. And the other half are people being like, this game is way too stressful. I just want to open the shop and not have this debt thing and have to, worry about all of this stuff, which to me is kind of crazy because economics doesn't work without time as being an important factor. But
So when you say that, James, I think that it's basically just different audiences looking for different things from these games, right? And I think
yeah,
you and I very much fall onto the we like games to have gameplay mechanics kind of things. And time
yes,
is 100% one of the best ways to build a time mechanic, to build a gameplay mechanic. And I think it is still heavily underutilized in all games. Like, there are so many ways to make games more interesting by introducing time limits and pressures. But there's also a very large audience for games like Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley, which have zero time limits and players can kind of just go through it at their own pace. Those players are not looking for a game like Recettear. It's not for them.
yeah,
And I don't think it's a fair criticism to say this game has gameplay. It's just not the game for you.
yeah. I'm obviously not in that audience, but what I mean is there is this level of like decision making and sort of stress that comes with the shop sequences,
Hmm.
which means I think that this kind of light-hearted humor and downtime pairs really nicely with it because you then get this ebb and flow of I'm focused and trying to maximize profit, and then there's like a little nice little short sequence that to wind down, and then you go back, and then I found it generally pretty easy to play this game like a week at a time, just because that like stress and relief cycle kind of felt pretty good to me.
Definitely, definitely, it's not pathologic.
Yeah, that's just stress the whole time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Pathologic is a game where you are literally, I mean, I guess you could say the philosophical conversations are the light-hearted breaks in Pathologic, but
Yeah.
otherwise that's a game that's heavy on stress at all times and you're constantly thinking about things. And I do agree with you. One of the reasons this game is perfect for a Steam Deck is how segmenty it is. So it's you can pick it up and play for a little bit and put it down and no harm, no foul because it's also clean.
So, generally, my feeling about the overall gameplay loop was pretty positive here. I found, like we said, I found it really easy to keep playing. And something that I wasn't, and you brought this up just before, that I wasn't really expecting from the game is like an indie Japanese title. I was expecting a lot more, jank from the systems
Mm.
than what I think ultimately was here. Like, it's actually quite intuitive, and I ultimately don't think that the tutorials necessarily tell you everything you need to know. But that, and there's a couple of misleading bits that we'll talk about later. But that remaining 50%, I generally found I could intuit what to do just by playing the game. So, like, that was kind of the rest of the game for me, was trying to figure out how things worked. Like, when you're in the shop selling things, you have categories of customers, like you have old men and little children and housewives and the guild master and some named characters, and they all have buying habits that I think were very clearly reflected in like their personality, and it made a lot of sense.
Mm.
Like, children had no money, so they would always barely pay you more than the base price, and if they came asking for a hat, you shouldn't give them the most expensive hat in the store because they'll get mad and leave. And then there's like a bit of randomness on how much money people are willing to spend, and old people are more fickle than other customers, so their random factor's a bit higher, which I was able to figure out on my own actually.
So where I agree with you on this is that I think it's a very clean and crisp game in terms of how it's set up. I think the thing about a lot of say in various indie management games that come out on Steam, which are, built in Unity or Unreal, it's like I want, like Card Shop Manager or Thief
Yeah.
Simulator or any of those kinds of games, is that they feel janky as fuck. They feel like a bit of a disorganized mess. Recettear, with its far simpler presentation and categories, it feels very elegant. Like it clicks together very, very cleanly. All the sound effects are fantastic. Every time you make a sale, it makes this nice
The
cha-ching
money shot,
sound.
the money noise is like, yeah,
It's
pure
great.
dopamine.
Where I guess I disagree with you a bit, James, is the gameplay mechanics, because I think the tutorial in this game outright lies to you in terms of
Mm.
informing your strategy playing this game. And that if you play a completely different way to the way the game suggests, then the game becomes much easier and the experience is radically different in a way that I don't think necessarily thinks makes the most intuitive sense. Like it makes a bit of sense, but there's a lot about under the cover that is a bit ridiculous in terms of how it functions. We will get into that later, but from a gameplay perspective, when you play the game as it suggests, you're doing yourself a massive, massive disservice. So the game says that the idea behind running this shop is that there are items that have a base price and you sell those items at about 130% of base price with those modifications you suggested earlier, which is all legit and makes sense. And if you do this, you'll make a profit. You continue doing this and you'll make enough profit to pay off your debt, right? So you find the items, you have little modifications depending on the new, there are news scrolls which change category prices and things and everything. So you take advantage of them, so on and so forth. And if you
The
keep
news bulletins. So the news bulletins, like, it's kind of funny. It's like almost fourth wall breaking. It's like almost like a TV bulletin will scroll across the top of the headline, and it'll say like, there was a horrific drought or something. The crop harvest this year has been terrible. The price of food has doubled for the day. Or like something stupid happened, thus everyone wants swords or hats or something. And then you can charge massively more or be forced to sell for massively less depending on the item.
or go to
So it
buy
adds
it at
this
a
bit
cheaper
of,
price.
yeah, or you could buy it at a cheaper price and then wait till it bounces back up and then sell it. So there's like the supply and demand thing happening.
And all of that is good. Like everything we've talked about so far, I think makes sense within the parameters of how it was explained to you, right? The thing that you need to understand about this video game, though, and this is kind of a spoiler, I guess, because this is something that James probably figured out and which I did not, and which you probably can figure out over time, is that the more sales you make without haggling, so the more sales you make without them rejecting a price, and the more sales you make by not charging customers very much, charging them, a little bit over the base price, not 130%, more like 105%, the higher the level of your shop will grow and the higher your customer relation levels will grow. And those things
Yes.
are the things which govern your ability to make money far, far, far more than charging that additional 25% on items. So, if initially when you play this game, you attempt to sell things to people at high prices, or what you think would be a reasonable price as suggested by Tia, you're going to screw yourself down the line. If instead you charge them basically nothing and build their relationships, the late game becomes absolutely trivial because suddenly little girls are carrying around $30,000, and the more expensive the item, the greater the profit margin.
Yeah, so there's two systems here. The first is the shop store level, and the second is individual customers' wallet sizes, which are two separate systems that kind of contribute to what you're talking about. So I played through the game and I barely beat it at the end because I only figured out one of these systems and had no idea about the way wallet sizes worked. So I barely beat the game by doing the strategy you described originally. I knew about the store level and was luckily able to keep that going. That's very important because it unlocks higher tier items, which means more profit. But yeah, if you don't, I think the store level thing you can work out on your own. I don't really think there's a great way to work out the wallet size thing without it being told to you explicitly. Like, I could tell that something positive, like people seemed happier when I sold at lower prices, but people's spending didn't really seem to be going up very much or anything.
Mm,
So I didn't feel that it had a positive effect, whereas it actually does. And if you take the hit early on into your run, it pays huge dividends later. And I almost feel like knowing that and playing that way would probably make the game less fun and trivial. Because, like, it was hard to finish the game the way the tutorial tells you, but it's
mm,
possible. It's just like I had to redo a couple of weeks several times
mm.
and really keep an eye on things and really push for every bit of sale and not make terrible buying decisions. Like, there was this class of item like the treasures, which were very expensive, but people didn't want to buy them very
But you
often.
know why that is, right? It's because they didn't have enough money. Because at least that
Money,
was the issue
yeah,
I had. But they're basically too poor, and I figured that out in retrospect. It's not that they were
yeah,
undesirable; it's that they were a category of item that was beyond the amount of money they had.
yeah. And I think I had to restart week one the first time because I bought one of these off a customer, and that ate like half my total net worth,
Yeah.
and then nobody bought it, which like made it impossible to finish the first week. So
So
yeah, there's
to expand on this a bit, I think the problem here is that the system is it's not only that it's poorly explained, it's that it's too simple because it only goes in one direction. So I think having
yeah.
this idea of a customer relations or customer reputation thing is not a bad one, right? Because you
Yeah, I
have to
agree.
weigh the concept of the trust and loyalty, I guess, or friendship or community that that individual has with the store with your intrinsic desire to screw them out of as much money as possible. You know, that's capitalism in a nutshell. And as a company, that's exactly the kind of thing you've got to balance. The problem is that reputation can't go down. So
Yeah,
if you can get them trusted with the cheap items, all of a sudden you can screw them over with expensive items and nothing happens. There's no balancing act. There's no trying to find the sweet spot where you're still making money off them. It's just once you understand, oh, I need to sell a few items to them at close to baseline price, all of a sudden it opens up an insane amount of profit, which isn't really a fun or interesting mechanic once you understand it, right? There's not actually much depth there. It's just that it's hidden from the player, I think, in a way that I'm not a fan of. I feel like having a more interesting, complex version of this mechanic with more clarity around it would allow for greater and more interesting decision making in the running of your store.
I agree. And like honestly, I'm glad I didn't know about it like when I finished like until I finished the game and looked stuff up for the review because I think I would have had less fun if like because once you know it the game just kind of falls over, right? That's what
Hmm.
I saw people like when I saw people talking about and debating about this mechanic, it seemed like the difference between knowing and not knowing this is like it's almost not a game anymore
Yes.
if you know it from the very beginning. So yeah, so that's not great. Although it's almost like the lack of information like made my experience better, which is weird. I just
No,
feel
I
like
see what you're saying because when you do understand this, the game is absolutely trivial. Like that. That's the thing.
yeah,
The thing about Recettear is that it's not actually a super complicated game, right? It's a very
no,
simple, easy to pick up and put down and understand and comprehend the basics. It's just that there's these hidden mechanics influencing things in the background. So I do agree with you that in some ways, playing without knowledge of these things are better, except that it just pisses me off, James. I can't help but be angry at this game for not for I guess not striving for a higher standard of mechanical complexity and instead doing it the way it does it.
when I finished this game, I was actually surprised that it was only 1 month long. I was like, oh, I thought it would have gone for almost twice as long and kept introducing things. That's what the other games that I've played kind of did.
Hmm. I think there is a post
What
game though.
there is, which I played for another 4 to 6 hours probably.
Mm,
The problem is that I have a real beef with the post game because the post game has no uh, debt or goals, so
mm,
it's just aimless shop selling. There's nothing to really do other than do all of the character stories
mm.
and finish the whole dungeon, which is like I was almost willing to do that maybe until I realized the post game dungeon is 100 floors long and was like, get fucked. Get, there's like not a chance. But like I really wish there was a debt in the post game. But yeah,
Sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say we should discuss the changes to I guess the changes to things as you advance your merchant level as well, because that's the other ways that there is, I guess, more mechanical complexity as you progress through the game.
Yeah, I actually thought this was fine.
It was good.
And good, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
the merchant level increases the stock that you have in the store. The merchant level gives you access to, you can expand the store, which is quite expensive, but quite worth
Worth it.
it
Yeah.
in the long run. So you have to kind of balance, do I expand the store this week or next week is kind of the question you have to ask. And like, if I expand the store, will I be able to make back the amount to pay off the debt this week? Which I thought was cool.
Customers start selling items to you. Customers start putting in orders, which is quite cool because customers will put in an order. I think it's two days
Yep.
beforehand, and they'll say, "I need items X, Y, and Z," and then some of those items you have to get from the dungeon. So you kind of have to plan a little bit in terms of fulfilling that order because orders are a way to make a lot of money a lot of the time, particularly when they ask for categories of items instead of specific items.
Yeah, like give me 3 treasures, asked the
Yeah, it's
guild
like,
master.
yes,
It's like,
please. I would love
yeah,
to give you 3 treasures.
yeah.
The only thing with this is once again, the way you improve your merchant level faster is by not haggling. Whereas to me, like haggling is kind of like meant to be, well, it's kind of like introduced as what you should be doing in the game. So you attempt to pick a price that's close to the max value you can extract from them, which decreases the speed at which your merchant level goes up. Whereas really, you're better off just smashing out that merchant level as fast as possible and selling it to them for cheaper by not haggling. It's just weird. I don't. It feels weird because the game is pulling you in two different directions, which would be interesting, except that expanding the speed of your merchant level is so much more important than getting an extra, you know, $30 from a sale.
Conceptually, I was kind of okay with it because it's the concept is like you pick a price that makes the customer happy the first time, which is like fine to me. I the way that like because every time you make a sale, you get a bit of experience and you get like a combo multiplier on that experience, which what's the max? It's like 8 times or
I think
more. Like
I think I think it goes all the way up to 32 maybe. I know it like doubles each time. So it's what's the
yeah,
word?
so like you can almost get like half a store level if you fifth or something from one sale if you're up at the high multiplier, which
Mm,
makes like if you make 2 sales, then break the combo with haggling, then make 2 sales, then break the combo. It just goes up at a snail's pace rather
mm,
than leveling up multiple times in the same day. So that ends up being extremely important because if you don't, because the first time I had to redo the last week was because I missed the final tier of items because I wasn't hitting those breakpoints quick enough. And then the second time I did the final week, I did get the final tier of items in like the second day of the week, which gave me plenty of time to make the debt amount, which was great.
mm,
This system, at least, I figured out because visually there's something on screen that it kind of explains
mm.
this to you or infers the existence of this system. Um, so I was a lot less. I had a lot less problems with this. It just felt like something that you just had to learn by playing the game, and I was okay with it.
Basically, the core of my problem with this game, with the shopkeeping part of this game, is that I think the idea of balancing these things is an interesting, right? You're balancing haggling and
Mm.
pissing off the customer because you've set too expensive a price versus them being happy with the sale. You're balancing how much money can I rip off this customer versus how much loyalty can I get from this customer to return to the store. These two concepts are interesting, and a management sim that has you try to balance these two things has the potential to be a lot of interest, to be very interesting. But number one, they don't explain it as a scale or a thing that you need to balance at all. They never say in these games tutorials, hey, here are these two things. You need to try to achieve a balance. And number two, one of these systems or one of the ends of this scale is so much stronger and so much important than the other that it's not really about balancing them. Once you understand that
Yep.
one end of this scale is better than the other, you just spam that end of the scale and then you beat the game. So all of this is to say is that what's here has a lot of potential to be done interestingly. And it kind of sounds like maybe it's done interesting in other management games, James. But for me,
Mm.
this was like a poor mechanical experience, even though the presentation of it all was very clean.
And I want to kind of like, I agree with what you're getting at.
Mm,
I also want to talk about like that's mechanically the decision making kind of aspect around buying and selling. I do want to give this game a lot of praise for the actual like tactile experience of the selling sections. Like they
mm,
are very fast paced if you are quick on your fingers. A customer appears, his speech bubble shows what he wants. It shows the item. This is how much. Enter the amount as quick as you can. Press the next like you hear the cha-ching and it goes to the next sale. This
mm.
like little loop of interacting with the interface and making lots of sales really quickly, I found immensely enjoyable. Like even if the actual decision making leaves a bit to be decided in some ways, and with some systems in a lot of ways, the actual like me sitting down at my computer and just doing sales for 2 minutes was fun.
I agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, which like I think gave this like it's not a super long game. Like I think you can beat it in like 8 to 12 hours if you like visit the dungeon a few times. That's easily the most time consuming, and you can kind of get away with not doing it. But I was happy to just play this in short bursts for like a whole week, and was very happy to do so.
Week of
Um,
in-game time, by the way.
yeah, yeah. So like I think they did a lot of like work and made it actually fun to sit there and press buttons in the game.
I agree. It's fun to play. I'll definitely give you that, James. It is a fun game to play. It's just not a particularly deep or interesting game to play. Is kind of where I'd go. And we are talking about the shopkeeping section because this is really a game of two parts.
So let's go to a music break. I want to play the open shop theme because it's like by far to me the fun part of the game and the most enjoyable overall. So there's not a lot of music in this one. There's probably about less than 20, probably maybe closer to 15 kind of tracks in this one. I didn't really have a problem with any of them, but it was my fondness for the actual shop selling that I think made me end up liking this song the best. I think the one that's playing when you're sitting in the store putting items on the stands gets a bit repetitive, especially if you have like a second screen, like you're chatting to someone on a second screen or something. It gets a bit annoying, but it generally like fit the theme very well. It's got a very like rustic kind of vibe to it.
I think the thing about this which makes the repetitiveness a lot more tolerable is the shortness of the gameplay chunks. So
Yes.
it's not like you're out listening to the same thing on repeat for 20 minutes. You're listening it to 2 to 3 minutes and then you move on to the next thing. And that means that the potential repetitiveness just isn't nearly as annoying as it could be. I like the music. I thought it was appropriate. And I think that, yeah, basically the short gameplay chunks really helped it shine.
Yeah, like honestly, most of these songs you're hearing for like 6 seconds at a time at most. It's like the town theme. You go to town, you immediately go to like a shop or something or the guild. It's
Hmm.
really just the dungeon songs that you hear for long stretches, which made me definitely like them the least. And then, yeah, multiple times I would have the shop sitting there and me be on something else on my other screen and then start noticing the shortness. But in general, if you're just playing the game, pretty good. So this is the open shop theme for Recettear. Alrighty. How about we talk a bit about the dungeons now, Patrick? I really was excited for this part of the episode because basically every review ever pans these immensely.
Universally reviled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with the overall sentiment, but I actually think it's like most of the reviews don't really get into the weeds about why it's such a problem, and I think
Hmm.
they also gloss over aspects of the gameplay that are surprisingly good despite the universal revile, right? So the way the dungeons work is that you are like the main character of Recettear Reset is an 8-year-old girl, so she cannot go out and fight monsters. So you go to the adventure guild and you hire an adventurer. There are several NPCs in the game. There's about like 10 or 12 who you can recruit and get their so-called guild card that allows you to give them money and take them into a dungeon. So in the dungeon, your character has each character has a different moveset depending on which one you brought. So the one you get at the very beginning has a basic sword attack. You later get ones that have like spears, throwing stuff. You get a wizard who only casts spells, and you fight monsters. You do about, is it 5 floors of dungeon, and then you fight a boss, at
Yep.
which point you get a choice. You can either keep going through the dungeon, or you can leave and take everything that you've kept. So in the dungeon, you have 30 or is it 20 item slots, and it grows later.
It's yeah. Starts as 20 and grows.
Yeah, and you can only take the best 20 items you find. At which point you can go and sell them. As you go through the dungeon, you will encounter monsters. These are like it's an ARPG, right? It's real time combat in randomly generate or seemingly randomly generated levels that have very basic rooms that are basically like a square with nothing but monsters in them, and then
Hmm.
a short connecting segment, and then another room with more monsters in them. There'll be chests, there'll be kind of random events like stuff like the floor is really slippery now, or there's
A bomb
fish,
will spawn.
yeah, or a bomb, or there's a cave fall, stuff like that to keep you on your toes. Enemies have a sort of a variety of attacks. There'll be some
It,
melee
it
ones.
reminded me of Yes a bit, like a stripped back version of Oath of Felghana. That was the closest in
Yeah,
terms of game
it
feel.
it's like that or Zelda 1 kind of, but
Crystallis, yeah.
Crystallis, yeah. You have special abilities, and you level up as you fight, right? So every time you hit an enemy, they explode into experience, which then fills your bar. And when you level up, your health and mana gets refilled, and you'll often get a new special attack.
Hmm.
So there's a little bit here. I think that my initial impression of the dungeons was This isn't particularly exciting, but it's not particularly offensive either. And I was a bit confused, to be honest, about the sheer amount of like negativity I'd seen around these. Like, I wouldn't describe it as good, but I was like, it's not bad. One thing I wanted to say was that I actually think that the game feel of hitting enemies is not just good, but like really good, like surprisingly good. Like you swing your sword and it comes out very quickly, it hits the enemy. The enemy will flash, play a getting hit animation, and get physically knocked back, which is actually, I found really satisfying. Like, it felt like your attacks had weight to them. When enemies die, they explode into these little gems that then automatically suck into your character and fill up your XP. And there's this like satisfying little sound effect that plays as the bar ticks up. So the actual feeling of walk up to enemy, and they have very little health, so you kill them in one, maybe two hits. So walk up, enemy explodes into stuff, fills your bar up, walk to the next room. That was fine. I was like, they could make this enjoyable.
I also just want to mention important thing about the combat is that you stand still when you swing your sword. So you can't just run. It's not an ARPG like the modern ones where you're kind of like moving and attacking at the same time. It's got this stop start thing to it, which I actually don't think is bad. I think that it does add to this general feeling of crispness that James is describing. It feels very, very basic, but it is clean. Like this is not some of the enemy attacks are a bit weird, but you generally have good control over your character and you feel like you have good control.
Yeah, and you move at a reasonably quick pace too. Especially, there was a
The chick
girl
with the
with
daggers. Yeah.
yeah, the girl with the daggers, or the girl with the spear who gets lost all the time. She has, if you double tap a direction, she sprints, which is super fast, and she actually holds a spear in front of her. So when you collide with enemies, it does damage while running, and then it bonks you back. I was like, and then like the characters are actually quite varied too. Like the wizard plays completely differently to every other character. And then I think the ninja girl or the thief, she can tell if a chest is trapped, right? I think. Stuff like that. And so like there's kind of like the building blocks for what could be enjoyable gameplay here, I think. The real problem, and I think this is the real problem of the whole thing, like I play a lot of RPGs, so I don't even
Mm.
really care about the rooms being bland or whatever. The main thing is that after maybe 20, 30 floors of the dungeons, they stop introducing new enemies and basically start recoloring the old ones. And the gameplay never progresses past that point. And
Mm.
that's maybe like 5% of the total dungeon amount that like, or 10% maybe. Like there's dozens and dozens of hours of dungeoning to do, but they really only give you like an hour worth of content for those dungeons, and then it becomes super repetitive super quickly. On top of this, I think that the rewards don't scale with the depth of the dungeon hard enough, right? Like in the
Hmm.
first floor of the dungeon, you get these shitty little toothpick items that are worth nothing. I was on floor like 50 or 60 or something, and I was still getting those shit items.
Which are basically exactly worthless at this point in time, right? Because your shop demands you be selling very expensive items at this point. So all
Yeah.
those cheap items don't do anything. Like they're worse than nothing.
Yeah, so like half the chests are trapped. Like the number of trapped chests, I think, is disproportionately high. Like it's like
Mhm.
50% or more
Maybe
almost.
even
So
higher, right?
yeah,
Definitely, it felt like, and even then, when you find an item in a chest, it's not like guaranteed to be a high value item.
yeah, correct. And then probably my biggest individual gripe with the system is the way the inventory management pans out in these systems. So what happens is you have 20 slots for items. You very quickly in like the first two floors get 20 items, right? They're all garbage, but you know, you had free slots, so you walk over them and it automatically puts them in. And then you walk up to a chest and you press A. or Z, and the chest says, "You can't open me because your inventory is full." So you're like, "Okay, go into my inventory, drop the lowest value item, open the chest, find an even worse item than the one you dropped." Be like, go back into your inventory, drop the new item, pick up the other item you just dropped, and then do that like lots. Like you do that lots of times. It's really annoying. I really, really, really think that they should have just let you pick up every single item and then upon leaving the dungeon, make your choice of which ones to take with you.
Or there should have been a toggle that just says take most valuable item if you're feeling lazy and don't want to micromanage that much, and then it just swaps out the 20 most valuable items. Or have them do what you said and have those more valuable items sorted to the top of the list. So you could just
Yeah.
go move the
Dunk,
20
dunk, dunk,
over.
dunk, dunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit more the thing is, it's a little bit more complicated because there is this concept of item fusion in the guild where
Mm.
you can take two very specific but worthless items and turn them into something quite valuable. So there is a lot of cases where you would want to keep specific items even if they aren't the most valuable, but you can figure that out. And I still think that if you picked 20 upon leaving, it would be vastly less annoying. So, yeah, the inventory management being a pain in the ass and the sheer repetitiveness of these floors that get bigger and bigger but don't get new content adds up to an experience that I was initially okay with and then by the end quite loathed, and ultimately was avoiding going into the dungeons because it was A, unrewarding, and B, I didn't like they were just not fun to do. So
I think that's a really apt description of the experience, James. Because like you, I was like, well, this is okay. It's kind
yeah,
of bland. It's kind of like not super interesting, but it's not offensive. It's just kind of there.
yeah,
To begin with, you go through it really fast as well. It's just like the shopkeeping. Like it might take you 90 seconds to get through a floor. Literally that.
yeah,
Sometimes faster if you just want to just speed through. Like it is very short, snappy, okay-ish. It's like a mini game, right? But
yeah,
as it goes on, it is just not something that can last a very long runtime. And in some ways, the saving grace of it is that you don't need to do the dungeons after a certain point
yeah,
because you make a lot more money by buying the high tier items directly and reselling them instead of getting the items for free because it's taking selling time away from you that you could be using to rebuy and restock your shop. So you don't need to go to the dungeon. It sucks that this whole chunk of the game is unrewarding and unfun, but you can mostly ignore it if you understand how the game works. At least after the start of the game.
it's kind of interesting that I think even though the dungeons suck, I ultimately don't think they detract from the game too much because they're optional. You can just not go there for
Which is
as
so funny, right? You'd think that this
yeah,
would be a core part of the experience. And I think you probably do think, like, my initial thoughts was, why would I buy items when I can just get them for
yeah,
free?
yeah.
Because the items I get for free have 100% profit value, whereas the items I buy might only have 30%
Yeah,
profit
that's
value.
why it costs two chunks of time, right? That's how it's
Yeah,
balanced. Yeah,
yeah.
but
But that is not how it actually works once you realize that the items you're finding are less valuable per bit than just buying a bunch of high value items and reselling them because you can just consistently do that once your merchant level and customer levels are high enough.
hmm. So it's a bit disappointing because I actually quite liked all the characters' movesets and playing around with them, but the enemies are so boring. I
The
like
bosses are all right though.
Yeah,
Like I
no, they're
think that the
good, right?
bosses
The bosses are
bosses
good.
they have usually have one gimmick, but one of the things I like about the bosses is that they don't have heaps of HP, but they do deal a reasonable amount of damage. So
Yeah,
you do get this feeling of threat from the bosses. I died to a couple of the bosses once or
yeah,
twice. Um and it's kind of very much like the Chrysalis bosses. Not quite as complicated. They are generally very simple with like one or two mechanics or patterns, but it's appropriate when you're facing a boss every 5 levels, given how fast you get through it. and it's a little fun spike in difficulty where you have to pay attention in order to not die.
And I felt the visual design of the bosses was like surprisingly okay and entertaining.
Crowbar rat.
Yeah, the giant rat holding a crowbar. I was like, that's funny.
What?
And then
Is this referencing something? No, it's just a crowbar rat. Okay.
And then his gimmick is he eats mushrooms and you have to make him eat the poison one so he falls over and you can hit him, or like the big rock crab who you have to throw the bomb at. You know, they're fine, right?
Over,
like totally
yeah, they're
okay.
fine.
Yeah. It's just to make like this kind of game fun, you need an obscene amount of content. I think that they didn't realize during development. Like, you need a lot of stuff and you need to keep throwing new enemies with different attacks. And I do think that the rooms having no like Zelda rooms have like blocks in the middle, and there'll be like a dangerous enemy and you kite them around the block to avoid the damage.
They're
There's
also
nothing
designed. There's zero level design because it's all just random, but it's like far less interesting than a typical ARPG randomization. Yeah, it's just bland and uninteresting and uninspired, which is fine for if you were only in there for 90 seconds at a time. So most of the time it's fine, but then it just never grows anything deeper, and you don't want to go there, and you don't need to go there. So it ends up being just a miss. It's like a big hole of nothingness in when it comes to the gameplay value of the dungeons.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's actually I hadn't
I don't
planned
hate
this.
it though. I think the hatred for them is overstated.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They're just boring.
Yeah. Apathy is the correct response, not hatred.
It's actually funny because I didn't plan this when I picked this episode, but they announced they're doing like a HD remaster of the game like this year. I was like, man, if they make the dungeons better, like they could, then like it would really make the game more enjoyable.
They're just going to improve the graphic. It's like, yeah,
that's it.
All done.
All done. One thing to note is that if you skip all the dungeons, a lot of the character stuff kind of doesn't happen at all. Like I finished the game, and then upon commencing the post game, did some dungeon to get it over with, and was like, oh, like 3 new characters rocked up in the town that I just completely missed in my playthrough because I didn't want to do the dungeons.
It's worth noting, so the post-game content is very heavily tied to the dungeon, particularly because you have no debt to repay anymore. So there's no real reason to make profits. The other thing I want to mention is, I don't know if you noticed this, James, but when the people buy things from the shop, I think they equip those items.
Yes, no, that's a core mechanic.
Very cool mechanic, yeah.
Tia actually says you should probably just undersell to make sure they get the upgrade. It's like, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. Although I
like that line through. It's quite cool how, you know, they come to your shop, they buy the item, then if you use them, they have the items you bought from them. I like that. I think it's a nice tie-in.
Yeah, when I played through Potionomics, there was like, you don't do the dungeons yourselves, but you like send people to the dungeon, and you can see on the interface there'll be this enemy, and this enemy, and so you can like stock them with like a fire resistance potion because, you know, there's like a fire breathing lion or something.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it kind of makes like the world feel more connected a bit, which I really enjoyed. And there was some amount of that here, not a huge amount. I think you can oversell on certain items, possibly, but there was enough buy limits on the high tier items that I didn't run into that much.
Did you mess around with the fusion mechanic mod?
I fused 3 items, maybe. They actually had quite high requirements. Like, you needed a lot of items to do the fusion. Like, you'd need like 3 of this item, 3 of this item, 3 of this item, and you cannot very easily target farm specific ingredients. You're kind of like at the mercy of wandering around the dungeon floors until you get lucky and it drops. Like, I do think certain enemies drop items more than others, but like it feels very dicey, especially if you need like a lower tier item, so you have to go back to a lower floor of the dungeon. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Mm.
So I think I made like two of them in total.
Yeah, I barely touched this. I did one item, and I was like, this was way too much effort for not enough reward.
Yeah, they were worth a bit of money. Like I felt like the amount of money I got back was fine to
Mm.
good. But yeah, maybe if like the ones where you needed one dungeon ingredient and one normal ingredient, I think were a lot more forgiving because you
More
could
doable.
just yeah. Um, in terms of like the out of shop and dungeon bits, Pat, how did you
Mm.
feel about all like the little skits and stuff?
Uh, so I think I haven't really talked much about this aesthetic in terms of like my enjoyment of it, but all
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
say, James, is that it's not for me.
It's not for you, right? Yeah, that's fair.
I can see why people find it very charming. I think it has a consistent tone, which is like light comedy, but I just do not enjoy this cute,
Yeah,
friendly, happy aesthetic. Not poorly executed by any stretch, but this is just not for me. Um, One of my favorite shopkeeping games is Strange Horticulture. I don't know if you're familiar with that game at all,
I
James.
know what it looks like, so think I
It's
know where you're
like
going.
gothic,
Yeah,
depressed.
yeah,
It's always raining outside. And that is like as an aesthetic, I fucking love Strange Horticulture. I think it's one of my favorites. And so I find that game so cozy and so you can just sink right into it, right?
yeah,
Whereas this is just not for me. So I think that I'm of the camp that I don't think this is bad. I think a lot of people will actually love it, but I just don't derive much enjoyment from this, and that's okay.
yeah. So I'm obviously the opposite. I picked the game and was like, I know I'm going to enjoy it. One of my favorite things that would happen in the game is the like emergent humor, I'm gonna say, that came with buying and selling items. Like multiple times I'd have something like a lady came into the store and she said, this is a prized family heirloom that's been in my family for like 6 generations or something. And it's like a ham sandwich. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's like, why do you have this still?
One of my favorite ones was I had a book of booze, and the little girl asked if
She could
she's
buy
trying to buy
it.
a she wanted to buy a
Yeah.
book. So I'm like, oh, this one will be perfect for you.
Yeah, and
The book of booze.
she's like, thanks, Recette, that's perfect. It's like, God
Uh,
damn it. There was like school uniforms or something was one of the items that you could sell. And it's
hmm.
like this old man came in and bought a school uniform and was like, this is perfect. It's like, bro, come on.
Man,
It's
you'd
fucking-
probably really love Neon White, James, because not only is the gameplay excellent, you'd love the story too. So
I don't know. I've seen it. It looks pretty bad.
it's so bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is not listen. This is not Neon White style storytelling. Sorry, I know it's a different game, but I do wonder if that game's just a giant shitpost. I do.
It must be,
I
right?
I don't know. I'm so uncertain, which means that it is very potentially a masterpiece because it feels like it was written by a 16-year-old. Like actually, and if it is written by a couple of adults that are doing it as a shitpost, then it is like an expertly crafted story. But if it's not, then it's terrible. So
It's
I don't know
terrible.
where I land.
Yeah. But yeah, in general, like found it very pleasant to play this game. I liked like not all of them, but like some of them made me smile, and a couple at the beginning did make me laugh. I think
I did like the girl coming in the shop in the Amazon box. I found that actually funny.
that was so stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was wondering about that because like nothing happens. I was
Yeah,
like,
they
oh, there's
introduce
gonna be a
her as
rival
like a
store,
rival,
there's
and
gonna be gameplay here, but it's just nothing. She just comes in and buys items from your store. She's just another customer.
yeah, except she buys for the highest price, I think, of all the people. Like, you could really get your money from that
Lisa.
character.
Yeah, it feels like cut content, I guess. But they could have done something quite interesting there.
Yeah, because the way they present it, they like give you a cutscene of introducing
Yeah,
them, and then like nothing happens. It's like a
just
bit
nothing.
confusing. Yeah. Her partner, the fairy, goddamn, she buys at like 105% and not a percent more like every time. So annoying. Um, I didn't get up to it, but I read about this. So one of the last characters you unlock is like a troll, basically. She walks into your store and tries to sell you things at like 10,000% price or something. Like, it's just like, this breaks your combo. There's nothing you can do about it, which would have made me really mad if they'd introduced that character during the story, but in the post game, that shit doesn't matter. So it's like,
Yeah.
fine, I guess. Um, oh, vending machines. You can set up vending machines in your fantasy shop, and if you zoom in on them, you'd see that they're literally called like Coke Cola and Sprite or something. Definitely skirting the line on trademarks there, but
They just actually have the Amazon symbol on the box as well. So that's
yeah,
it's very jarring. It's like, is that just literally an Amazon box? And the answer is yes, it is. So that's something that the remaster will change, I think.
surely. I was also like, was there Amazon back then? I swear I didn't use it till like 2015 kind of time, but maybe it was bigger than
Must
I
have been
remember.
something. I don't
Yeah.
remember. That's ancient history, James. In the before times.
The before times, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I have, James. I think this is fundamentally a pretty simple game. There's not an endless amount to talk about until you start talking about speed running. Then there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. And I kind of agree it's pretty simple. So jump into final impressions then.
All right, I'll go first this time. So I had fun with Recettear. Surprisingly, I think it was a perfect game for the Steam Deck. And I was quite happy to finish this game. It's funny. It's a hard game to recommend because I think like the gameplay value of this game is quite low. In the sense that there's nothing deep here, and what is deep and hidden isn't actually that interesting. It's just that by hiding it from the player, uh, you make a lot of mistakes. And once you understand it, you stop making those mistakes, and the game is simple. But it is very snappy and clean and easy to play and satisfying in the moment to play. So I guess I'd recommend this game as light fun. If you want something to do in bits and pieces on a mobile device, if you want something like simple to just click through because games have been too hard for you lately, you'll probably get 5 to 10 hours of enjoyment from Recettear. But as a video game, like as an experience, it's something you'd like sit down to play on your PC for a couple of hours as an evening of you playing video games. It gets like a minus recommendation. It's terrible. Because there's nothing to really think about once you understand the simplicity of its systems, either in the shop or in the dungeon. So yeah, it's an okay game, and I have mixed feelings about it. But it's not all bad, and there is definitely fun to be found here, in a way that surprised me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Recettear, and most of that enjoyment came from like how snappy everything felt to play. Like I liked moving the character around the shop and like putting stuff on the tables and clicking rapidly through sales and hearing that cha-ching noise, right? And then even the beginning of the dungeons, it was man, the feedback on everything is just so good. Like sound design, I think is something they nail in this game, and it leads to a very enjoyable to play from the five senses point of view kind of thing, even if you're not making, lots of super difficult decisions. I actually found myself, because I failed to understand one of the systems, the end ended up being a lot more challenging than I was expecting. But once I understood my mistake, I could see that if I was to play this game again, it would just fall over. So this game, I agree with Patrick. It's light fun. It is an enjoyable time. If you can mesh with the aesthetic and the sense of humor, I think you'll really enjoy it. Otherwise, it's just, generally fun to play. And I think something that's really important is that it really does not outstay its welcome. And it generally introduces stuff each week so that it feels a little different. I really like stuff like the order system, and like trying to intuit how each specific customer, like their purchase habits and that kind of thing. I thought that was pretty engaging. The dungeons are terrible, but ultimately a bit inconsequential if you mostly avoid them. It's a good time. I actually really enjoyed this one. I was like, upon finishing the game, I was sad that it didn't go for longer and wanted to play more, so I started the post game and then realized it was mostly dungeoning and promptly put it down. So that's all to say that, yeah, I would recommend Recettear, and I don't really have much qualms about recommending it like semi highly either. This shop simulator kind of genre isn't particularly saturated, I don't think. Like, there are more these days, but it's not one that you see. Like, there's not one releasing every week. It's like there's one every few months, or even like one big one a year, maybe. And they all pretty much are heavily inspired by this one for good reason, I think. The newer ones, I think, do certain things better or worse, but I still think that in terms of that tactile feeling of buying and selling in the moment, this game does that better from the ones that I've played. So, ultimately, yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. It was a lot of fun for me, and I'm actually was expecting Patrick to give this one a hard pass. So, like a light pass seems like a really good endorsement, honestly, to me.
Well, yeah, I guess the thing is that even though the mechanics here are lackluster and the aesthetic isn't really my style, like I cannot deny the cleanliness of this interface and the experience. And I think that it's something that I give the game very high marks for. It is so easy and clean with so little stuffing around to play this game. You just pick up and play it, enjoy it in the moment, and then move on. I do also think that playing on my Steam Deck, that I've kind of like, a lot of the time when people say perfect on the Steam Deck, I don't understand why, because it's, for me, it's a lot more fun to play video games on my PC generally. But this is definitely a game that fits a portable console perfectly to me because of how chunk size the gameplay is. And I wouldn't really want to play this game for a 3 hour stretch. That seems kind of miserable to me, actually.
Yeah.
I'd get bored of it and it'd outstay its welcome. So the only other thing I want to mention is a game that I have not played, but I want to mention a game called Moonlighter, which received a lot of press when it came out, which is basically the same thing as this game, where you are a shopkeeper moonlighting as an adventurer, and it's like an action RPG. So if this sounds like your thing, then Moonlighter is potentially worth checking out as well. And I wonder how the two compare.
So you've not played that one then?
I have not played it, so I can't, give it a recommend or compare it, like the point of the show is. But I just know that it was a game that was very highly received. But in a mixed way, I think that not everyone loves this game to pieces. I think it's some is better than its parts. So if I had to guess, I imagine the gameplay is more robust than anything in Recettear, but maybe it doesn't have the charm.
I would give Potionomics a high recommendation if you like this game. I think it
Mm.
does the time management thing like 10 times better than Recettear does. Because basically, in town, there are about 10 NPCs who each offer a different service, and visiting any of them eats a time segment.
Mm.
But they, like, you can visit the marketing person to create buzz about your shop, or you can visit the blacksmith to make a new cauldron or something, or like they offer you conflicting but powerful options. There's different vendors that sell things at different prices. There's the guild to send the adventurer out, stuff like that. So, and also like spending more time with characters. So the way haggling works in that game is it's essentially Slay the Spire. Like you have a deck of cards,
Which is awesome, by the way.
and
That
and the
sounds very cool.
and the cards are like upsell or something like that, and you kind of have to try to beat the person while still, yeah. And each character in the world has about 6 cards associated with them that if you become friends with that character, you get their cards that you can put in your haggling deck. So there's like this thing of it is optimal for me to go to this character to make the most profit, but if I hang out with this other character, I could get this card that might make my deck better. And like it's constantly trying to figure out like where I should spend my segments of my day. And then of course there is, you spend an hour selling your stuff, of course. So
It's the same game as Pathologic, basically. I mean, I say that half in jest, but it's actually the same because like I said, the time mechanic in video games is desperately underutilized. Opportunity cost is the core of what makes decisions interesting, and a time mechanic basically makes every decision have significant opportunity cost.
yeah, Persona also has this thing where like you have a schedule and you can do a certain amount of things each day,
Yeah, but
right?
it's for lame reasons. It's like making friends.
Oh, there's mechanical benefits as well.
Yeah, but
Like mostly
social links.
mechanical.
Ugh, I hate it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want someone to die, James. I don't want to like have a slightly annoyed friend because I didn't hang out with them. I also feel like what I like about Pathologic is like things get worse when you don't make the right decision, whereas Potionomics and Persona, it's just about things improving. Like, imagine if you had all these friends, and if you didn't spend time with friends, they would start to hate you. That's more my
It's like
jam. The friendships break. That's when it gets interesting, right? Where you actually get sucker punched because you can't keep everyone happy.
yeah, I kind of like see the appeal of that. But like it was funny because I marathoned Potionomics in like a week. Like like could not think of other game, like do anything else but play the game when I was at home because it was fun and addictive, right? And then I finished it and was like, that was awesome. And then like the Steam reviews were so negative because people didn't like the time management. I was so
The
mad.
the thing is, James, people don't like gameplay. That's what I've slowly started to realize in my
Yeah, people
years of
like
doing this
the
show.
aesthetics
People
and
people do not like gameplay. It's fucking crazy, and I think it's one of the big reasons why I have a disconnect from so many reviewers. But it's not just that they have a different perspective on gameplay. They don't actually like gameplay. Like they don't like the idea of doing something badly. They just want everything to be good and happy all the time. So anyway, this is a rant for another day with more substance than me just saying random words. But I think that's the heart of it. They don't want pressure on them, even though pressure is the heart of what is the engine
yeah,
room of
important
gameplay.
decision making. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that very much these days. Because I was playing Mario Kart again recently, like doing time trials and stuff, and I was curious on people's favorite stages, and I noticed very obviously that all everyone's favorite stages were the ones that had a good music and be a good theme, and it was less about the mechanical track design, like this is fun to drift around or this has these cool level skips and stuff. It was more about the theming and aesthetics,
It's so
which
funny. It's
yeah,
it's not wrong. It's just like so far removed from the way I think. Like the whole thing I loved about Diddy Kong Racing was those silver coin challenges, purely mechanical, and that
yeah,
lit my brain on fire. But people just
yeah.
it's wild sometimes.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway, next game, James.
yeah, it's your choice, isn't it?
Oh, before I do that, I forgot to introduce the show, so I'm just going to shoehorn it all in here. James and I are the Retrospectives podcast. What we do each and every episode is we play classic games of the past. If you like our stuff, check out our website, which is rspodcast.net. Thank you so much for listening to us today. There's a bunch of links there, but the two most important are the links to our Discord server, which is where our community of listeners resides. We would love if you would drop by to tell us what you think or give us a recommendation. And if you would like to support the show monetarily, if you want to support what I'm doing, we have a Buy Me a Coffee page. We'll put links to both of those in our show notes. Next episode. So I have picked a game that I have been intrigued in for a very long time, but I actually don't know that much about. It's one of those games that I saw amazing press for it when it was released, but it was a console exclusive, and I did not and never have ever really owned. Well, I owned a PS3 for a while, but long after it was a prime console. But I kind of completely missed that era from PS3 era onwards of gaming consoles in a lot of ways. And that game is Vanquish. Vanquish is a third person shooter made by Platinum Games, who are famous for their actiony games like Bayonetta. And all I really know about this game is that it is a high velocity third person shooter that implements some of the things from games like Bayonetta into it to give a real different feel to the cover based third based shooters, which dominated this era of console shooter games. Do you know much about this game, James? Have you seen people play it? Do you know what it looks like or how it plays? Because
This
I'm
is the one
really in the
that's like
dark.
super quick, right? The one where
Yeah,
you're like boosting
or
around and
it is
shooting.
interesting. It was super quick at the time it was released. So one of the things I'll be interested to see is if it's actually as fast as as it was perceived back then, because games back then were fucking turgid. They were very slow paced.
Yeah. See, what I'm expecting is like the Star Wars pod racer of action games where I'm boosting around and but we'll see. I'm kind of excited. I actually was thinking we hadn't done like a third person action game for like a long time, I think. And it's a genre that I feel always had a lot of games, but I feel like big releases. Like the last one in my
Gears of
mind
War,
is
I
like
guess.
DM. Oh, it's a cover shooter, is it?
Well, this is one of the things that's interesting about it, right? I think that it is a third person shooter that is not a cover shooter, or it encourages a more aggressive play
Hmm.
style. So there might be. This is the thing. I'm kind of going in a little blind because although I've read a lot about this game in a vague way, I know very little about the specifics. So I'm excited to give it a try and see what all the fuss is.
Yeah, this will be our second game from this group of developers. Really, I think Beautiful Joe was. I think they went Cloverworks into Platinum Games with a lot of the same people. So it'd be interesting. I've always liked that company's games, although I think in recent years they kind of dropped off the map a bit. But we'll see.
Yeah, so Vanquish, I'm very excited for it. It got a PC release some time ago, I think 2018 or something. So I will be playing on PC 100%. Hopefully mouse and keyboard are supported and I can breeze my way through the game, but we'll see.
So we'll catch you guys next time for Vanquish.
Thank you so much and adios.